Hello, folks. Hello. I am happy to be here. It is Tuesday. It is New York, and we are going to be talking about quilting. So, when you get here, leave me a comment to let me know that the comments work. I'm looking right over here. I will have to let you know I have not accomplished a lot lately. In New York, possibly in other places as well, but where I live in New York, temperatures just dropped from the mid 90s to the mid 60s, like they saw a cop. And when we have such a sudden weather change, I don't handle that very well. So I wasn't feeling very well for the last several days. But I'm not hot anymore. I'm feeling a little better and getting some quilting done. So, hello, everyone. Um, we have some cooler temperatures. Hello, June. It's nice to see you. So we have some cooler temperatures, which makes it a little easier to quilt. My mother is not a quilter, crafter, sewer of any kind. Hello, Janet. I'm glad you're here. Not sure why your name came through, but I can see you now. Often Facebook just shows up as Facebook user. Hello, hello. Um, so she always wonders how I quilt in the summertime. You can't quilt when it's hot. I'm like, I can quilt any day. I just will be wearing shorts and and a tank top. I will have a fan and portable air conditioner going and doing what I can do. Happy Tuesday. So let's see what is new. What I've been doing when I haven't been feeling well. What do you do when you're not feeling well? I've just been achy and tired and grumpy, not wanting to talk to anybody or do anything. Anybody ever have days like that? So I went into my scraps. I recently made a quilt. Let me show you pictures of it. It's currently on social media right now. Let's find that window, this one. So this is a quilt I recently finished. I am several wedding quilts behind, including my own daughter's. So I made this quilt. It's going to be mailed out, and I have several more to make. I have at least 3 more weddings I'm behind on. So I recently quilted this. Love this quilt. The pattern name is Picnic Patch. It is a cutie pattern. I'm a cutie pattern designer, but sadly I did not design this one. I have, however, probably quilted over 50 of them, if not more. So this quilt is, I think, about 72 by 72, 70 by 70, something like that. Some close-ups. There's the feathered wreaths we were talking about in our feathered wreath, in our feathers class. I have some meandering in here, which is covered in the First Steps to Free Motion Quilting. I have a lot of ribbon candy in here, which is also covered in First Steps to Free Motion Quilting. And then I have pumpkin seeds stitched into the corners. Those are covered in the As the Bobbin Turns. I have video there on that. All of those classes that I've mentioned can be found at debbiebrownquilts.com. Click the online classes tab. So it is Free Motion Feathers, Quilting Essentials, Free Motion Feathers, As the Bobbin Turns subscription, and Quilting Essentials, First Steps to Free Motion Quilting. So it also has these feathers in the border, which are covered in the feather class. There is the cornerstone. Whoop, and now you'll see I also do social media for my church. So I will stop sharing and come back and see you. Oh, Facebook user from hello from Rainy and Windy PEI. I'm guessing this is Sandal, who might be traveling. Weather makes me very unmotivated. Yeah, I was unmotivated to get out of bed. So I was happy to jump into my scraps. Since I had just finished that wedding quilt, I continue digging into my 1.5-inch scraps. Let's see another comment here. Sitting wrapped in the first quilt I tried ribbon candy on. It's pretty unlike ribbon candy. But whatever it is, you can name it a new name and call it after yourself. I can't see you are a Facebook user right now, but yeah, so I'm not sure what that is, but I'm positive what it's not as I tried things. And I'll tell you a few more things to let you know that yes, I understand the experience. So let's hide that one. Let's see. So I decided to go through my scrap box of 1.5-inch strips. This scrap box of 1.5-inch strips, it's full. It's like packed in there. And I've already taken several quilts worth out. So I've made a whole bunch. I've made another quilt of gray that's ready to piece together. And then I made another quilt of blue that's ready to piece together. I think the gray is going to have black and gray cornerstones, and this is going to have 2 shades of yellow cornerstones, I think. They're both going to be quilted with white fabric. But when I did that, I have extras. So I have extra strips that are too small to make into this quilt. So I have another quilt I've started that is 6.5-inch strips. I have 2 quilts I've started with 6.5-inch strips. I'm sure it's a Bonnie Hunter pattern. So I think I'm going to use some for that. But what do you do? Do you ever pull these out and go, I have to make something with this particular set of extras? Because that's me. Then I have all of these strips left over of blue are big enough to make another blue quilt, plus all the ones that aren't big enough. So much fabric. And then I took more of the strips and I started making Sweet Tooth. Sorry, couldn't remember the name of the quilt. So this is called Sweet Tooth, and they go together this way. I have more of these, and I have a whole bunch of these already made that I cannot currently find. Probably have a whole quilt's worth, but I don't know where they are right now. They'll show up with my rotary cutting blades that I lost so many years ago. 2016, I believe. So Sandal, it is you. Yeah, I figured you were, that was you in PEI. I do know someone who lives in PEI as well, but she doesn't typically jump in. She is a pig farmer on PEI. Yeah, I'm a strip maniac, which is funny because hi Madeline, because I normally work in color blocks, which we talk about. So I started cutting some of my fabrics into squares for color blocks. And I have more color blocks already pieced, but they're over there and I can't reach them because I moved my desk. I've been working on another side of the room. So my computer is on my desk and my desk moves around the room. It's just a little laptop cart that moves around. My sewing room is modular because I have tables that I need if I'm going to be basting a quilt, or I put them next to my machine for more support if I'm machine quilting. So my sewing room moves around all the time and I just have to keep replugging things in. So yeah, that's what I've been doing. And that's, I've been working in these, which makes me feel like I've been cheating on color blocks, but I am behind on wedding quilts. So it kind of works out. So for color blocks, I still am working on getting the quilting done. I didn't do the quilting on the Celebrate quilt yet. And I have it. It's basted. It's right there next to the iron, waiting to be machine quilted. So maybe later today, maybe tomorrow. So that's color blocks. I'm going to, as we talked last week, I'm going to be quilting streamers in it. I'm really excited about that idea. Let me pull up a picture of the quilt that should be here. Give me a second. It's around. Teachable color blocks 2023 Celebrate image. There we go. So let me share that with you. Here we go. So that's the quilt I'm talking about. I'm going to take some black thread and stitch strings on here. And then I'm going to take different colors and stitch streamers all through my quilt. I'm pretty excited about it. I think it's going to be a fun quilt to quilt. And I will, of course, video it and it'll go into color blocks. You'll get your newsletter once it's done. Let me come back and say hi. So Annette, hi, hello in Florida. Probably didn't drop from the 90s to the 60s, going down into the 50s and even 40s at night. I think you might be a little warmer than we are, but happy quilting in Florida. Um, as I said before, my mom doesn't understand that you can quilt when it's hot. I was teaching in Dubai in the Middle East, and she's like, but why would people quilt there? It's hot. I'm like, we don't quilt because we're cold. I don't think any of us quilt because we would perish in the long winter in our dugout hovel without another warming layer on our bed. We quilt because stabbing people is frowned upon. No, quilting does something for us that is other than keeping us warm, but it keeps us warm as well. So that was in Color Blocks. I'm going to be posting about the quilting of the balloon of Celebrate the quilt. That if you are not familiar with this, you can go to DebbieBrownQuilts.com, click online classes, and go to Color Blocks, any of the Color Blocks classes. They're all free. This is Color Blocks Goes Wild. And while this isn't a critter, it is a bonus quilt celebrating all the wonderful good days. Quilting lowers your heart rate. Mine, it will, whenever I finally get off the steroids. My watch is telling me that my heart rate is up. That's just because I'm on a lot of medication right now. So that's what's going on in Color Blocks. I also have As the Bobbin Turns, which is a subscriber video collection, and you can subscribe to that for a set price a month or a set price a year, and I put content there that you won't see anywhere else. I have some fun new stuff on there that makes it easier to see when you're quilting. That's going to be going up shortly. Then tomorrow and every Wednesday night, I have a live video on YouTube and in Debbie Brown's Machine Quilting Studio Facebook group, going through my feather class. Now, this is a complement, a supplement to the feather class. So my Quilting Essentials Machine Quilted Feathers class, I realized that if I wasn't going through it in real time with you, that a lot of people had no incentive to do the next lesson. So tomorrow's lesson is going to be on spineless feathers, which are really fun, really quick. And in the class, it comes with a really neat little pattern called, I believe it's called Wound Up. So we'll be talking about that tomorrow night at 7 o'clock New York time on YouTube and in Debbie Brown's Machine Quilting Studio Facebook group, which is the longest name for a Facebook group ever. And I want to call it Bob, just to make it easier to say and remember and write and all of that. So that's what's coming up there. Now, last week in the Feathers group, in the Feathers class we talked about doing feathers that were flexible. So feathers, I'm not sure if you can see the quilting in here. Let's get this. So I did a feathered wreath in the middle of each block, but I did a circle feathered wreath, a traditional one. And the one we talked about last week went all the way out to the border, to the edge of the block, so it didn't have any background quilting. I quilted around this block 5 times, if I quilted the block, which I didn't, but quilting the block. So I quilted the circle, I quilted the outer feather, the inner feather. Doesn't really matter, but I always quilt the outer feather first. Then I quilted meandering inside, and then I quilted around the outside 5 times around the block. So I didn't actually quilt with the flexible feathers. You only quilt around it 3 times: the circle, the outer feather, and the inner feather. No background quilting required. This quilt, I didn't quilt around the block because I quilted all the blocks and then I quilted in between them in rows, just because it's so much background quilting. But if you were following along in the Facebook group on Friday night, let me get my Hello Kitty trash can. Every time I go to my sister's house, I take care of Mom whenever she's out of town because my sister lives nearby. And if my sister's traveling, I'm there. So I take care of my sister's house and my sister's dog at the same time. And she leaves me a Hello Kitty gift every time. So I have a lot. But this is what happened Friday night. I realized that the last quarter of the quilt I quilted, the thread had slid out of the tension disc on my machine. So the tension was terrible. And I took out hours of picking out stitches. Does this look fun to anybody? And this is gray-green thread that I quilted on this blue quilt. So it was about a quarter of the background quilting that I had to pick out. Now, the best thing I can say about bad tension on a machine is my top, excuse me, the top thread tension. The thread had pulled out of the tension disc, so there wasn't tension, as much tension as there should be on the top thread, which means it was showing underneath the quilt. Now, I have a quilt that's called class that's called Quilting Essentials Thread, Needle, Tension, and Thread, Needles, Batting, and Tension. And it's talking about how to use different threads, how to use different needles, how to get the tension right, and what different battings do for your quilts. So that is another class I have. But every once in a while your tension goes bad. So what happened was there was no tension on the top, so the stitching was showing on the back of the quilt. All I was doing was just pulling out the bobbin thread and then winding up the top thread, flicking out the bobbin thread with a seam ripper and winding up the bobbin thread. For 3 episodes on Netflix, I think I was watching the movies that shaped us, and it was the really important movies that shaped us, which were Friday the 13th, Halloween, and there was a third horror series. So it was like Freddy Krueger, Jason, and Michael, whatever. Nightmare on Elm Street. That was the third. So I was just going back to my teenage dating years. Those were all very popular movies when I was dating my husband. So anyway, I finished this quilt, and then I picked out a quarter of it, and then I finished the quilt again. And now I have the binding sewn on, and I sew my binding on the back, flip it over to the front, and I will next stitch that down. So that's how I bind my quilts, and I bind them by machine, and they get done. And then I don't have all of my quilts stacked up on a chair waiting for me to hand bind them. So that's what I've been doing. You'll be seeing video on that. I did video that will show up in As the Bobbin Turns next. So that's what's been going on in feathers. Let's see what else is going on. Cooking. It's farm season again. So I live less than 2 miles away, like within walking distance, because these are all country roads, no stop signs, just no yellow lines, no sidewalks. They're basically only 1.5 lane wide roads. So that's what's between me and an organic farm that has community supported agriculture. So every year we pay for them at the beginning of the year, and we just pick up our food once a week. So it starts slow because not everything is in yet, but I'm doing a lot of cooking. I've already cooked up the bok choy. The strawberries have been good, and we got so much lettuce. It's like salad for breakfast type of lettuce. And also I used my last onion from the last year on Thursday, so it was a good time to get new onions. So that's what I've been doing. I've been quilting and cooking and being grumpy and alone. So I'm feeling better now, not so grumpy, and I'll be getting more work done, sending you a newsletter of all the new things. So I hope you're not grumpy, but you're quilting with joy rather than because you want to avoid people. But whatever we need, quilting is here for us. I hope you spend some great time quilting. Oh, let me see another pattern. I'm getting some more comments here. So I love the patterns and lessons in the feather class. Yeah, in the feather class, I give you a project to practice your quilting on. So I design little projects for you to work on instead of just practicing on plain fabric or a piece of scrap fabric or an old sheet or something. I always find it's more beneficial to practice on an actual project with seam allowances and seams and different pieces of fabric. It just gives you a different mindset that you're working on a real quilt and that it does matter. And you somewhat. I mean, we know this is a practice piece. These are charity quilts, baby quilts, whatever. So it gives you, it's not going to be perfect, but it gives you a little more of a true experience of what it's like working on a quilt. And let's see, Janet, you made the wound up quilt smaller so you get the practice without making a big quilt. Yeah, wound up is kind of a maze quilt that just goes around with 2 different colors. When you're working on a home machine, it's real easy. Start in the center and turn the quilt as you make your feathers go out and out and out and out and out. On a long arm machine, though, if you're doing this, you're kind of doing the top, the side, and you're going to have some more knots unless you scroll up and down. But it's a little quilt, so it should be doable. June, you feel for me? Yeah, I mean, Not one of us is getting younger, and between arthritis and some autoimmune issues I have, weather impacts me, and I just feel ill. So, we all are dealing with it to some degree, and if you're not dealing with it yet, you'll be dealing with it at some point, as joint problems and things like that. So, yeah, it's a common experience to all mankind. Let's see. More comments. Madeline, thanks for your share with us. Oh, you're so sweet. I love you guys. You I'd be willing to talk to. It was real life people I didn't want to talk to. It was uh, I like people as long as they're quilters. Otherwise, people make me grumpy. I think yesterday I had to drive somewhere, and there, we only have 1.5 lane roads, and one lane was blocked because someone was having work done on their house. So there was a tractor trailer with construction equipment and all of this blocking one of the lanes. And I'm one of the only people who knows that if your lane is blocked, the oncoming traffic has the right of way. Sadly, I was the right of way, but I was getting horns blown at me because I decided to go around the trucks and because I had the right of way. Anyway, it's that type of grumpy people thing. Anyway, weather makes me grumpy. Let's see. I believe that's might be Sandal again, that you quilted the wound up on your long arm. It is totally doable. You can either wind up and down, make some knots, and I do explain that in the class. The class is for people who are working on home machines and long arms. I happen to do both, so I talk about both. While I usually only film on the home machine, just because when you're filming, the camera's right here on a long arm, and then as you're quilting, you quilt into the camera so that all you see is like the back of my arm. It's just easier to film on a home sewing machine. So that is what I have going on. I have new stuff coming with As the Bobbin Turns, color blocks, and in the feather class. So stay tuned for it all. I hope to see you tomorrow night, Wednesday night at 7 o'clock New York time in YouTube or in Debbie Brown's Machine Quilting Studio Facebook group. If you can't make either of those times, because I am not the most important thing you have going on in your life, or you're in a different time zone, or I know we have a lot of Australians, so you're waiting for breakfast on Thursday on our Wednesday night group. It is archived there, so you can go and find them. In YouTube, though, you do have to click on the live video tab to find it, or in the playlists. I put it in a playlist. You can also go to DebbieBrownQuilts.com, scroll to the bottom where the blog is, and it'll always give you links to the latest class. So happy quilting, everyone. I'm going to go back and get those things done for you. So look forward to a newsletter coming from me shortly when they're all done. And I will see you tomorrow night or again next week at 2:30 in New York for what's coming up for my weekly Facebook update. Happy quilting, everyone. I'll see you again soon.